Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and I'm thrilled today to be joined by a legend in Massachusetts. He's probably going to smile at that, but we've got Scott Plath with us today from Stone's Hospitality Group, and with his wife Kathleen, they actually have 3 restaurants within their group, and I'm going to introduce those: Cobblestones of Lowell, Moonstones 110, and Stone Social. Did I get it all right, Scott?
That is correct, sir. Yes, you did.
All right.
I'm not sure about the legend part, but thank you.
Well, that's what I've been hearing. So, I figured I'd just toss that out there.
I think infamous, maybe.
Yeah, that may be closer to the truth, but either way, thank you for being here today. We appreciate you taking some time on this Friday morning to talk with us. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Hey, to get us rolling, I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of your journey with building your business, Stone's Hospitality Group, and a little bit about each of your different brands that you guys have within the group at this point.
Sure, be happy to do so. The story started in my neighborhood in New York when I was 12 years old, delivering newspapers, and an opportunity to take a larger route presented. So I took my my neighbor's route and doubled the size of my route, which put me to a restaurant on the fringe of the neighborhood. And one day, one of the 3 brothers that owned the restaurant asked me if I wanted to be a busser and dishwasher on weekends. And at 13 years old, I was washing dishes and bussing tables, and I just fell in love with the business. I'm one of the very fortunate people, fortunate or dumb, I don't know, but I never looked back. It was like this is going to be my life's work. These guys are happy, and they play music, and they have beautiful wives and great cars, and it's they make a living entertaining people, and just all of the senses stimulated. It was just a party all the time, and I'm 13 years old. I'm like, this is great. So I went to UMass Amherst to their restaurant program. I was pretty confident that I would be an owner. I think I probably had some innate entrepreneurial genealogy going on, and I was set. I wasn't going to work for a large corporation. I was going to get to my own restaurant, and started a catering business in my mid-20s with a friend who was a chef and classically trained, and we started saving all our money. And then we got busy enough or frustrated enough that we knew we needed some brick and mortar. We were doing all our work out of our houses, our kitchens, and so we started looking for a storefront. And as it happened, my father-in-law, who worked for the city of Lowell, my wife's hometown at the time, pointed out that there was an empty restaurant building in the downtown area that had been abandoned more or less for a year, but it was pretty close to turnkey. Now, we were looking for a deli storefront, and this thing was 12,000 square feet, 3 stories, historic designated, like iconic building in the city of Lowell, which was built during the Industrial Revolution. And we fell in love with the space. It was way more than we were looking for or were really even ready to handle. But we negotiated an amazing opportunity, which allowed us to protect both our upside and our downside, an important business principle that I think I don't know if we knew it at the time, but it's what we did. And the city needed a quality restaurant. So we put up quality restaurant, knowing that it was a steak and potatoes town. And I laugh because through the years I've developed this. We're a steak and potatoes country, so you can deviate one way or the other, but you have to have those staples. And so we created those staples, and then added a little bit of imagination and ethnic twists, and did our thing with really great food, but approachable, with a tavern and a function room, and I think 10 years later, I was restless and wanted to create more opportunity for our managers, because I was in their way,
Yeah.
and I am a creative by nature. So once again, we opened. Kathy and I opened Cobblestones, and she chose the name to go with the historic perspective of Lowell, but we chose a restaurant that would satisfy what we were looking for when we were 30 years old.
Mhm.
We wanted a fresh burger and a green bottle of beer, opposed to diner food or bar food. So
Right.
that's what Cobblestones was. And 10 years later, as lounge dining was emerging in Boston, with Ming Tsai and Blue Ginger, and I always was intrigued by cultural influence, growing up where I did, and being exposed to so many different cuisines. And small plates dining was emerging. So Moonstones was opened 13 years later, with the idea that we would sort of progress the suburbs. Give them an urban metropolitan experience in the sleepy suburbs of Chelmsford, only 5 miles away from our current restaurant, our first restaurant,
Uh-huh.
and sort of flip the coin. So Cobblestones, sturdy, underfoot, staple, and then Moonstones a little bit more ethereal. The moon,
Yeah.
and Moonstones is an oyster in Rhode Island, we found out. So we wanted to feature seafood and raw bar. We built a raw bar and a great cocktail list. And that brings us to, Stone Social, which we opened a year ago in the middle of the pandemic, because that's what we do. We open restaurants during recessions and the bottom of the economic downturns. So if you're ever going to make an investment, watch what we do. The next time we open a restaurant, take your money out. That's kind of the way we roll. And Stone Social wasn't built for Kathy and I's preferences, but in fact, we saw a lot of trends occurring in the industry, and we're getting older, and what are our kids going to want to do when they're all done with Chipotle, and ready to actually spend a little bit more money. So we created Stone Social with more a younger demographic in mind, and in response to industry changes and challenges that were predictive, and only exacerbated now beyond COVID.
Right. That's yeah, that's a great story, and a long story, because you've been doing that since your mid-20s, you said, when you got started.
I was intent to have my own restaurant by the time I was 30, and we signed a lease while I was 29. We did not open the doors until 5 days after my 30th birthday. But
Wow.
yeah, I'm 58. So for 28 years, I've been running restaurants, and
Mm.
I'm not fast. We're trying to. The third restaurant is a beta site, and we do want to recreate it. And I've hired a director of operations to help me do that. I'm never in a hurry. I want to get it right, and I want to grow responsibly. And I'm too old to have a failure on my resume. So we're 3 for 3 thus far, and I'm okay with that.
Well, hey, there's nothing wrong with batting 100%, my friend. That's
right.
that is something that not too many people can pull off, and that makes it an amazing story in itself. With 28 years of doing it, and doing it on your own, and I love the idea of Stone Social. Kind of having a growth pattern, built into it, and are you guys thinking of the franchising model, or are you thinking of just owning them as company-owned stores?
I think that all options are on the table. As I said, it's a beta site. It's number one. I'm not considering yet a proven concept, although we love it, and the feedback has been amazing. We just hired some consultants that helped us launch it to come back in and do a review, and give us some opinions on growth strategy. I think that we have some targets in mind of what we want to do for sales and how many stores we want to open over the next 5 to 10 years. And, then we'll see what happens. If I can continue to own them and have others direct them and continue their success, that's fine. And, or franchise is fine too. I think it all depends on where we are in a few years.
Yeah, I think
I don't see retiring, Jeff. I love what I do, but I can no longer be the boots on the ground.
right, right. Well,
If I can keep the right people in place and create opportunity and enthusiasm and passion through them, then I'm all for going as far as we can take it.
yeah, well, I like that, and I'm kind of one of those guys that, I can't really decide. I think one of the biggest questions for anybody looking to grow their restaurant is, which way do I go, company owned or franchise? And there's pros and cons to each.
Sure.
I like owning my own stuff and trying to find those operators who will take it as their own and go with it. But then again, I've never had a franchise business, so maybe I'm missing out on something there. But it's a tough choice, and
Sure.
I guess opportunity, may drive that as well. If with the staffing challenges we have today, I don't even know if you try to give someone a restaurant if you can get them to come to work.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It is a challenge, and I think the big downside for me to franchising is I think that what we do is entrenched in culture, and in responding or looking at some of the questions that you posed prior to the interview, what there is nothing more important to me than our culture and who we are and how we represent. And I think it is the key to success, to how I define success anyway. So figuring out how to perpetuate and deliver on guest expectations based on who we are, I think gets much more difficult if somebody else is controlling that role.
Yeah, that makes total sense all the way around, and and that'll probably lead you in a different direction from the franchise model. But who knows? Time will tell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny? My restaurant hero is Danny Meyer in New York City, and he had to be convinced to open Shake Shack, and I don't know if today he has delivered on his vision of maintaining the culture of hospitality that created his restaurant group in Manhattan. But he had to be convinced that it could happen, that he could franchise a model and still, and he wouldn't have to be there to make sure that his ideals were represented. So be curious to know what he has to say about that today.
Yeah, that maybe we can do a little outreach and get him on the show and kind of get his take on that. That'd be
a beautiful thing. I'll watch that one for sure.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, kind of following that information I'd sent across, it kind of moves us naturally to talking about challenges and obstacles that have been in your path. And, I'd love to hear one or two of the kind of the bigger things outside of COVID, although we can talk about COVID separately, but anything in particular jump out that's been a challenge for you that you've been able to overcome?
As I looked at your list of choices, I think what popped out to me was training. Because 28 years later, I'm still trying to figure out the right way to train and to, again, back to that culture, but not just culture, standards and procedures. And I think one of the greatest challenges of our business is innately connected to the one I just mentioned, turnover and attrition and training. We have so much turnover and so many people coming through. How do you maintain, to the standards that you expect and your guests expect without excellent training? And I would say that we have good training, but I surely wouldn't rate it excellent. And as we look to recreate this new concept, It's omnipresent right now on figuring out what way we're going to go and how we're going to execute on getting everyone and keeping everyone on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's definitely a big one for all businesses, but specifically in the restaurant industry or hospitality industry.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say, what was that quote? It was something about they hire for attitude and then train for excellence.
That's right. Exactly correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I like that. It took me a minute to pull that out of this old brain of mine, but
Yeah.
it's increasingly difficult, and with the way the market is today, and all of us or all the restaurant owners specifically, and every business is struggling for people. How are you guys kind of getting through that right now with being able to find and retain people?
Well, I can tell you the first part of the answer is that we created a model that requires less people. Our industry was already headed for a labor deficit before the pandemic, and the pandemic has only exacerbated that situation. But in finding people, we're dedicating one of our managers, a good third of their time is being spent every single day recruiting. And if they show up for the interview, which is these days, you don't know if they're interviewing just so that they can check the box for unemployment, which now is going away. So, but everyone thought that would be the windfall, and it's not. It was an easy victim to blame. The government paying people to stay home, but that's really not the crux of the issue. It's probably just a small part of it. I think that you have to work harder than ever before to retain your good people. We're paying higher wages than we ever did, and we are writing the book. Find them, keep them. Find them, train them, keep them. To quote my previous director of operations. You have to keep what you have, and sometimes it's not possible. The restaurant business is wrought with people on their way to somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's great part-time work. It pays well for college students and second jobs, and we're still trying to figure that out, Jeff, honestly. But we're as close to being fully staffed now as pre-pandemic times. And two of our restaurants are now opening another day of the week, which we haven't been able to do for months.
Nice.
So we're very inspired by that. And I think we're managing differently and setting different expectations also for the guest as well. We just turned down a party that wanted to come in at 4:00 on a Sunday when our hours are going to be 10:30 to 4. And I'm like, not going to ask the staff to stay 2 more hours. We've been in a business of yes for so long. I think we've even to some degree created our own monster in trying to compete for business, because it's such a competitive industry with such a small profit margin that I think we say yes way too much to our own detriment. And I think now, you'll get to a question later. I'm already starting to answer it, but what's changing? I think that we have to do some changes internally and lower the expectation. I was in a supermarket the other day, and it blew my mind how many choices of milk there was. I don't shop all that often, and from the percentages of normal milk, cow milk, and then there's cashew milk and almond milk and soy milk and oat milk, and I'm like, people actually come to the restaurant and they order coffee and they want to know if you have oat milk. I'm like, good God. I'm like, how can we ever succeed if we are meeting every single whim and expectation of our guests? It's a recipe for failure. So I think that the pandemic is making us, sort of leaner, meaner, is our internal rally cry right now. Yeah. Let's shrink our space. Let's shrink our staffs. Let's keep our standard and our reputation high, and play the long game to make sure that at the end of all of this, at least we have our integrity.
Yeah, I like that. And, I think you're exactly right. As a consumer and a frequent restaurant guest, I think since pandemic, my expectations are not what they once were. And I don't know if it's because I know the business and the industry so well, or if it's just I've been trained now, since COVID to expect a little bit less. And by that, I mean, maybe I have to wait a little longer.
Hmm.
Maybe I've got to look and see that there's 5 empty tables over there on the right-hand side and wonder, instead of getting mad about not being seated at one, I understand, hey,
Yeah,
they're not using those tables because they got nobody to serve or they're short in the kitchen or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So, I think you said it right. We've got to retrain and lower expectations for consumers in some cases, and learn to say no. I really like that. You can't afford with the margins that you're running to cater to every whim of every consumer that or every guest that's in your shop. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? The other thing too, Jeff, is hospitality needs to go both ways.
yeah,
And it hasn't always. I've never liked the reservation system. Um, it's like, and I understand it. But reservations are a one-way contract. We're obligated to hold your table, but you're not obligated to show up or show up with the full amount of the party. And so we sit there with an empty table and you're half an hour late, and then you come with 2 instead of 4. Well, that's meaningful revenue to us. And so, and I don't mean to sound angry, I'm not. But as there's a real shift going on in the industry, and what we're doing right now is putting statements on our menus and on our social media, because people don't accept change easily. A
no,
lot of people are really, they don't get it. And it's not their fault. It's hard for us to change. I mean, that thing I said before about saying yes, we've been saying our yes our entire career. I meet with my managers once a week and say, I know I've been asking you to go, go, go for 27 years. Now I'm asking you got to take it down a notch, because if they will wait for the table, once you seat them, they will not wait for the drink. They will not be okay with waiting 40 minutes for their dinner. And so how would you rather disappoint your guest? I couldn't get a seat, or I couldn't get my food. It's an easy decision if you're sitting in my chair. And I can tell you, we spent the last year fighting for our survival. And when you're clinging to survival, like coming out of it now, it's like, what else can you do? What else can you do to us? So I'm talking about society, pandemic, and the pain of laying off 100 employees, and then building back, with 10 and then 15 and then 20. So if we can't seat you right now because we can't serve you right now, then if that's not okay, we're okay if you go somewhere else.
right.
And we're asking on our menus and on our social media for folks to be patient and kind, and understanding, because we are still fighting to get back to some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are great messages. And, if we can get more owners to kind of fall into that same trend and start doing that with the consumers out there, then I think guests will slowly but surely have to change. And, another thing that brings to my mind, and I know I jump around all over the place, but
In the club.
yeah, food prices, being so high, and your
Yeah.
costs being what they are today. I think, I've noticed that when I go out to eat, it's definitely more expensive today than it was last year.
Hmm.
And I expect that now. Are you getting any negative feedback from price? Well, let me ask you, have you made price changes, and
Sure.
are you getting negative feedback, or
Sure.
everybody okay?
No, you know what? I'll tell you a story at my own risk. Last night we had an event in town, and in Lowell. Lowell has a lot of concerts and shows, and sometimes when 2 of them occur at once, we just get hammered.
Mm.
Well, we were legit hammered last night. We probably couldn't seat as many people as we did seat. And our people who have not been in this mode for 18 months now, and a lot of new staff, a couple of them look like deer in headlights. And they did a wonderful job, and they fought the good fight. We got through it. But at one point, a couple who had waited an hour and a half, they were the extreme, but they were disappointed. They were late. They were trying not to be late for the show. They didn't get to enjoy their food. So I said, I'll take care of your dinner tonight, and you'll come back and try us on a night when not everybody is trying to get to the same show at 7:30. And I said, let me take your bill. And they said, no, we insist on paying. And they're like, it's $50. We only had a couple of hamburgers, but it's $50, $47. And I'm like, no, that can't be. I'm telling you, my own restaurant, I looked at the bill, I'm like, oh my God, that's what it costs. A couple burgers and a couple soups and a couple soft drinks, and we're at $50. And so I had my own sticker shock. But listen, we're not recreating the wheel here. We're maintaining the same standards. So the hamburger costs us $1, we're selling it for $3. That's the way. A 30% food cost is what has delivered us 27 years later, and we're going to stick to that math. And if folks have to pay more for it, then they have to pay more for it. There's no choice here. Well, that's not true. There is a choice. We could make portions smaller. We could buy substandard product. We could change our mode and compete with chain restaurants and serve frozen packaged food. But we won't do that. We'll go out of business first.
Yeah. Well, I think you, as well as many other owner operators, are kind of in that same boat. They don't want to change the standards. They want to stick to the quality that they're known for and not damage their reputation. And like I said, it's noticeable when you go out to eat, what you're paying today. But I had a small sandwich with a bag of potato chips and an iced tea, and it was $12 and some change, and it was not a big sandwich. It was there wasn't a whole lot to it. So I was like, years ago it seemed like that should have been $5 or $6, but I understand. You don't like it, but that's how it is.
We made a really hard decision a month ago. Well, we had really great chicken wings at all three of our restaurants. Not the same chicken wing, but all three had really great chicken wings, and we took them off the menu. After chicken wings are on Cobblestone's menu for 27 years, Moonstone's menu for the whole 13 years. There's just no way the public is going to understand this thing that used to come in a giant bowl, for a quarter a piece on football Sundays. I was at a restaurant, it was in a vacation area this summer, but it was 6 chicken wings for $18.
Oh my God.
And I saw that. I'm like, I love wings just like everybody, I guess, but I'm not paying $18 for 6 wings. No damn way. We just have to take it off the menu for now, because there's no way we can afford to, we can't afford the loss, and people will just not understand.
Yeah.
That was the decision we made. So the chefs put fried cauliflower on the menu. This is thinking outside the box, right? You have to take the protein off and put a vegetable on and make it buffalo style and spicy and crispy, and it's selling well. You'll never convince me cauliflower is a chicken wing, but these are the strategies being employed, my friend.
It's a far cry. I had somebody tell me they went from chicken wings to buffalo chicken thighs.
Chicken thighs are great. It's just still not a chicken wing,
Yeah, no, it's not a wing, but they were trying to adapt, just like you guys had to. Still wanted to be able to offer it. So
yeah,
it's just funny not funny, but it's interesting to hear all the different ways that owners are having to go about making change and trying to find a way to maintain their margins to be able to survive. Because like you said, the food costs are up. Labor costs are up. So, right there's your prime, and that's 60% of your cost. And if that suddenly becomes 70, you're in trouble.
That's right.
You're probably going down.
Yeah, that's right. You got that right.
So what do what do? You gotta get creative and find ways to reduce that. And you guys, it sounds like, are doing just about everything. And I think some of our, our listeners should get some great ideas off of what you shared, to be able to help themselves do something very similar. As hard as it is, we got to make change.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said a little while ago, and I mentioned that I went to a roundtable, an industry roundtable yesterday on a very busy day full of meetings. I have never pictured myself as a meeting guy, and I am in more meetings these days. It is killing me. I mean, I'm going from meeting to meeting to meeting because, you have to keep everybody on the same page, and there's so much strategy right now. I haven't worked this hard in a long time. I mean, I go to bed every night knowing that I gave it everything I had. I talked to a manager last night. I said, listen, thank you for your trust. I'm like, we don't have all the right answers, but we spend every waking minute trying to figure it all out. And just recapture, so we can get back to being hospitable and happy to see customers and not have to worry so much. But there's an awful lot of worry associated with the direction our industry is going. I don't even know where I started just now, but
that's okay. As you were speaking, something hit my brain, and I didn't prep you at all for this question, but it's pretty simple. I'm just curious about alcohol sales. Are alcohol prices and shortages also an issue? I haven't ever asked that. So
no, much less so.
Okay.
Much less. I mean, we run into an occasional, can't get that right now. There are more outages than before, but no, there hasn't been a great disruption to alcohol distribution. I think the local brewer, who is a friend right here in Lowell, Navigation Brewery, told me the other day he is working as hard as he ever has to keep supply. But that's because his demand is up. A lot of people drinking beer.
Yeah, you got that right.
So we might not. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say we might not be able to eat, but we can drink.
That's right. The bar is open.
Yes, sir. Well, curiously, just for my learning, is do you have a ratio of like the alcohol to food sales that you're chasing after, to try to meet your profit objectives? Or
sure,
kind of how does that? How do you split that up? I'm just curious.
Our two legacy restaurants have maintained very close to 60-40 the entire time. My first restaurant was closer. Cobblestones began a little closer to 55-45 food to beverage. But as we evolved through the years, our reputation for culinary excellence sort of steered the concept more towards dining than drinking. So we're pretty solid at 60-40. The goal of the new concept was to get closer to 50-50 for any number of reasons. But it's funny, as we spoke to the consultants yesterday and recently, they're like, maybe we need to think about selling more food. And the food is great, but there's more sales in the food. There's more margin in the beverage. There's more sales in the food. So it's a constant struggle trying to figure out what the right, the ideal mix is.
Yeah.
We're about 55-45 at the new spot, which is supposed to be younger, hipper. The idea is to be, supplant the local Irish tavern with lighter and brighter, but then have the food be surprise and delight, because the reputation of our previous two restaurants is the culinary is so elevated and reputed that our guests are going to come looking for that. So even though it's a grilled cheese, let it be the best grilled cheese they ever had. Is kind of our perspective at the new place.
Are you guys doing any catering business out of any of those?
Our catering business has really dwindled over the years for a number of reasons. Lack of corporate representation in downtown Lowell. A lot of corporations left the Chelmsford area as well. They're starting to come back, and also because I think it's stretched us too thin. I think you do what you do best, and people come for a great experience at our restaurants, and I think we just caterers who do catering really well. Like we're competing with people who do it full time, and let's not compromise our brand.
Yeah.
So
Well, that makes
much
sense.
less.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just wondered, since you kind of started that way, you evolved out of it more or less. And
That's correct.
And you're right; it is different. It's a different business, and those that focus on it directly are going to be tough to beat.
Yeah.
And focus is important. I had a guest on not too long ago that was talking about focus, and one of the things they were doing from a leadership perspective was to really try to get his managers focused on what they do best, and he basically had them pick two things, and so two components of their job, and that's all they could do. They had to learn to delegate everything else they were doing, to try to bring up, those that worked with them. So that was, I just thought that was interesting. It's, we all get stuck doing too much and wearing too many different hats. And if you have the ability to try to really focus on what it is that we do best, we tend to be more successful. So
Sure.
I like that strategy. And, it's with what you guys are doing, and we've already touched on it, training and leadership development and all that. Have you done any formal or gotten any formal programs in place yet in that regard? Or is it still kind of, you've got a training program, but it's more or less, for servers, for example, you follow each other around for a few days and you learn the menu and all that. But can you share just a little bit about your training components that you're doing today and where you want to get that to?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what my wife, who, one of your questions here is about folks who have influenced, my leadership style, and I put I maintain a long list of things that people have taught me throughout my career. It resides in my files, and it's open on my computer right now. I can tell you each person who taught me this thing. But there's nobody who's represented on that list more than my wife. She was very successful in business for many years, and a really smart person. And as we were talking about putting the training program together for the new store, she sort of giggled, at me talking about. She's like, "Well, are you still picturing people with paper and pen and making checks in boxes?" I'm like, "I am. Yes, I am." So that's what we've been, and I've got file upon file. We've got a list for it, Jeff. If we do it, it's on a list. Opening side work, closing side work, sanitation, sales techniques, 55-star strategies. We have it all on paper. But the thing I learned from a very, very prescient and beloved ex-employee who spent 7 years with us, finding her way in life, once said to me, "I don't learn the way she learns." We all learn differently. And so sitting somebody down with a stack of papers to read and study isn't going to make them a better server, and I'll never forget the day she pointed that out to me. I was like, "Holy smokes,
Yeah.
she's right." I'm like, "I can't read and learn." I'm like, "That's not what I do. I watch and learn." So we are still trying to figure that out, but I can tell you right now, it will be electronic.
Yeah.
It will be electronic. And I was just, my director of operations emailed me late last night a deck from a large corporate training package to study and take a look at, which is, color, slides, and do we turn that into video? I think that video is probably the best way. I have a vision of a hologram. But we'll talk about that later. I can't have you stealing my ideas.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds really cool. I want to see it when you got it ready to roll.
All right.
But yeah, I think you're on the right track there, especially with the younger generation. They're all about their phones and electronic communications, and if they can pull up that content right on their phone and get it video and even
Yeah.
audio.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Absolutely.
it's the wave of the future. Now the challenge becomes getting all that good content that's on paper, making sure that it's part of that system, getting it all in there.
Sure. It's funny. We had a grad student at UMass Lowell a number of years ago approach us about putting together some training processes, and it was a really great idea. What he was doing, he was creating games
Hmm.
out of the training program. But the problem with grad students is they graduate and they move on. So, and that's what happened. We
Yeah.
met a few times. I wasn't as engaged as I should have been to create a success in the window of time we had. But I love that. If a bell rings when you get the right answer, I'm in.
Yeah, yeah. That would be cool. A little app on your phone, and yeah, I like that, and I know that's a big learning component out there these days. So I'm sure if you're looking into that now with some larger companies that are in the training business, you'll probably get all kinds of options. So
Sure.
hopefully that will help with your not only recruiting but with your retention. To cut the attrition and making sure that you're able to deliver the experience you're trying to deliver.
Yes, sir. That is
all
the
you,
goal.
yeah, all you got to do is get them in the door now.
Yes.
If
Step number one.
Yeah, if we come up with a way to solve that challenge, then I think we could make us some money.
Yeah. I know recruiters out there right now, they got their work cut out for them.
Yes,
I mean,
yes, sir. Yeah, my wife's in the staffing business, and I can tell you she's frustrated.
Yeah.
To say the least.
It's hard. It is hard out there. I actually thought that the labor market was going to turn to our favor,
Right.
as restaurants closed because of the pandemic, and that we'd have more options. And
Yeah,
nothing could be further from the truth.
No, people just I think people are abandoning those jobs and going on to something else, and just not, they left and they're not coming back.
Well, I don't want to lean too far left, to your varied listener, but you cannot pay the rent when you're a cook in a restaurant. Certainly not in this area. And so
Mhm.
something has to change, and we didn't create the system, but it's the system we're in, and we need to work to make it better.
Yes, sir.
And I don't
Yes,
know what the
sir.
answers are, but I know people aren't going to spend $25 for a cheeseburger. They're gonna go to McDonald's and eat something that's less healthy and packaged, and I don't know. We're going into bigger terrain right now, a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
rougher terrain. That's for
yeah,
another day, right?
yeah. Yes, sir. That's for another day. And I'm looking over at. I just looked over at my clock and realized we're getting close on the timing. So as we start to wrap up, I'd love to ask you if you had any pearls of wisdom or pieces of advice that you might give to other restaurant owners who, we find a lot of folks have that one restaurant and they're kind of stuck at that level,
Mm.
stuck on the sales numbers, not really growing. Any advice or words of wisdom for those folks to kind of help them get over that hump and take it to the next level?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, of the challenges that you presented for me to choose from, I chose training to focus on, but obviously finances are closely tied to options.
Mhm.
But one of the things I would say that I learned later was to trust the experts, and to make the investment in expertise, because you can find yourself in a real catch-22 trying to get ahead, and you can't because you're trying to do it all yourself. And there's only so much two hands can do. So I think trusting others, empowering others is huge. Um, and I think that you have to stick to your standards. Don't compromise on your ethics. I think that there are times that we've closed stations and sacrificed sales tonight, rather than staff it with somebody who doesn't care, is apathetic or mean or oriented to blame and pointing fingers. We won't have that in our environment. And so if we have to give up some sales today to to be better tomorrow. I think that's important, that you have to, walk the walk. If you want everybody to be kind and hunt great results on behalf of your guests, then you have to do the same thing.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate that. And is there any other thing on your list of things that you wanted to share with us today that I failed to ask you or to dig into enough?
No, I think we hit a lot of good things. I think that work smarter, not harder, is another one I've learned from my wife. I tell my chefs all the time, you have to. I know you want to come in and start playing with the food. I get it. That's why you're a chef. You love this, right? But you have to sit down for half an hour each day and plan your day. And not find yourself running around like a maniac because you didn't take the time to think. You got to allow yourself that time. I think it's really important. And again, this is the pot calling the kettle black. A lot of my lessons I've learned through the years by trial and error and doing the wrong thing, and allowed myself to become wiser.
Well, I think that's great advice, and everything that you talked about has been extremely helpful for our listeners, and I'm sure some of them are going to go back and listen to it a few more times to try to grab all those pearls that you shared. So thank you very much for your sharing your story and your expertise, and congratulations on what you're doing. And we look forward to seeing that third concept start to expand in the near future.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff. We're very excited for the future, and you know what? Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Be a good community member.
Yeah.
I learned from a very wise person a long time ago. What comes around goes around. Take care of the people around you, and it comes back to you in spades in the business and your people. So be out there and help do right by others. It's the golden rule. For those that go to church every week, right? It's good karma if you play, frisbee, or you're a Buddhist, right? So all of these things, put it out there, take care of others, and it comes back to you in spades.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And a great piece of advice along with everything else you shared. And again, for our listeners, we're talking to Scott Plath. We're going to have his website up here on the screen. Should be running here at the beginning and toward the end. But Scott owns Stone's Hospitality Group. Well, he and his wife Kathleen, and there's again three concepts today: Cobblestones of Lowell, Moonstones 110, and Stone's Social. So if you're in the area, get over there and have a meal with these guys.
We'd love to see you. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again to all our listeners for joining us for another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. We look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Thanks again.